So I want to, once again, come to our panel. I'm going to ask you who you are, what organizations you're with, and then why are you on this panel about influencing policy to influence sciencepreneurship.
So, hi everybody, my name is Mario. I came for the snacks.
Hungry judge.
Hungry judge. No, my name is Mario Brandenburg. I'm a Parliament State Secretary in the German Ministry for Education and Research. And I guess the research part is what made me come here. And the expectation is hopefully to say smart things.
Thank you.
No pressure on you. I'm Allison, originally from Germany, but I've been in the Bay Area since 8 years now. I run an organization called Foresight Institute. It's older than I am. It existed since 1986, but we try to support very ambitious, niche, sometimes quirky science and technologies that don't otherwise get funded. So we do a lot of brain-computer interfaces, and we do a lot of cryptography for AI. We do a lot of molecular manufacturing, and we give prizes, fellowships, grants, workshops, seminars in these areas, everything that you need to do to start a new ecosystem up, basically.
I'm Darja. I have a background as an entrepreneur, but now I'm Director General of the Swedish Innovation Agency, Vinnova. And apparently, I mean, policy in research and innovation is kind of my day job and also a bit of a passion by now. Why am I here on the panel then? Obviously, and then I'll come back to that. But basically, any science-based approach to research and innovation policy will have to start with admitting that right now, with a sense of urgency, the challenges we have now are so urgent and so massive that we need all the knowledge, all the talent, all hands on deck, and we need to move faster. I mean, it needs to be translated into real innovations that scale and have an impact, period. And, you know, and then how do we do that? So that's the most relevant question to have right now in research and innovation. So obviously very honored and happy to be here.
Thank you, Darja. Frank?
Hi, I'm Frank. I run a research group at the medical faculty of the Technical University of Dresden. And we spent out 4 companies so far, and was on the Unipreneurs winner, one of them. Very happily saw that this was acknowledged also, because it's not so much so far, at least in Germany, recognized as a success when you spin out companies as a professor. So I think this was a good thing. And maybe I can contribute a little bit to ideas how one can do next generation innovation, maybe policies a bit better, faster, and from a scientist's perspective.
Fantastic. And Frank had his award with him, and I asked him to bring it out, and he hid it in his bag along with this gentleman. So we've 2 unipreneurs in the audience as well. So congratulations to you guys. So let's get started. I thought how you can create. We talk about now this AI summer. AI went through its winters. AI is now going through the summer. Everybody's talking about AI, etc. And a lot of that can be influenced by where the investors are smelling the opportunities, but it also can be influenced heavily by regulation or deregulation, and therefore policy changes. So I wanted to put that on the table as an opening one, is like, how can we use policy in order to influence entrepreneurship, sciencepreneurship in university or at any level in organizations? So whoever wants to take that one up first.
I mean, you asked for organizations, so I obviously speak for the state, which is not a typical organization. But if you take the AI example, I guess that's perfect, because there are so many things we might use AI for, and there might be lots and lots of business cases where you don't need the states because everybody is already waiting for it or investing in it. But then there's stuff we might need it for society, for healthcare, for different things, where on a logical perspective, me as a politician would say that this is a piece where we have to talk. May it be in terms of making it open source to look inside, or basically to start spending when there is not yet a market. I guess more the SPRINT case. This is why we are on that panel. And obviously, yes, so I would agree. There's always the chance to use regulation or deregulation to do something good or bad, but I guess it's absolutely different on which level you do it, or if you do it on the business side, or if you do it in a state side, which has to be a broader approach, because I was on a quantum panel for, I don't know, 12 minutes. Not on the panel, I could listen to a panel without talking, and I enjoyed it pretty much, and they said the state has to be there to basically stay, to preserve the winters. And when the next summers are coming, it has to remain somehow. And I guess this is a typical state role. You would not see this as a VC role. And this is a type of, I would say, preserving which state invests or basically state research can give.
Do you want to build on that, Frank?
Sure. I think I can resonate that because we actually got state funding with a GoBio program, which is, the state government has programs to basically find science projects to then make them ready for a spin out, and there are programs like that. We got that. But the winters sometimes are still longer than one might think sometimes. I mean, we were in the area of basically genome editing, which had a couple of years now again, because Nobel Prize then was given to CRISPR and so on, all of a sudden was there. But when we actually had our big publication and the state funding, the investors weren't ready apparently. There was still winter. We as scientists were not able to basically get enough interest from the investors to then invest. And I think that's still a gap that sometimes is there, which I don't know as a scientist really how to fill it, but there's often missed opportunities where one could really speed up things, but the gap between the scientists who have already clear in mind why this is so important and the investors to bring this across is sometimes apparently not easy to do.
Well, this is the challenge you run into all the time, Allison, because Allison's like living so far in the Foresight Institute in the future, waiting for the world. There's a famous quote by the hockey player Wayne Gretzky, and he said, how he was interviewed one day by a journalist, who was like, how are you such a good hockey player? And he's like, I just skate to where the puck is going. But you've skated there and you're still waiting for the world to catch up and kind of, I'm over here. So that's extremely frustrating. And you also need then the funding to have enough runway to keep you going.
Yeah, I mean, I think, we talked about it in terms of policy changes, but I think at the end of the day, it's all the biggest problem is funding. I think at least, because I just see that, like, in the US, you have some organizations, you have the ARPA-E, ARPA-H, IARPA, DARPA, then you have, some, like, even funds like Incutel, right? But you also, they have a really good grasp still at, like, really funding science and technology innovation. But then you also have, like, lots of private efforts now. There's things like SCSP, which is supporting the US government on, like, AI. Then you have, things like ARC Institute, you have Arcadia, you have the whole FRO, Focused Research Organization efforts. And they're often kind of, like, privately funded by people that were just like, we need to get going on this, so let's just do it ourselves, basically. And they're modeled according to, like, the large organization. And I think what we really need to do, especially here in Europe, is, like, we need to celebrate much more when people do give out, I think, really these, like, big sums of money for really ambitious, hairy problems. And I am so happy to see what JEDI, what ARIA, what SPRIND and so on are doing, because I think we need much more of that. And I think, as you said, we need it really fast. Like, we can't wait around for that, I think, for a very long time. And so there is this gap. We're trying to bridge it, I guess, within Foresight by matchmaking individual fellows from universities to individual funders that could help them with spin-outs, but that's not going to scale. We have 80 fellows per year. How's that going to work? Many other organizations are doing it too, but we need to have, like, a program for that, really, that is, like, actively trying to incorporate more of also the business mentality into universities, and then has, I think what you both mentioned, sustainable funding. Like, no one who's on a 10-year track will switch from that into an alternative, ambitious problem to try to solve that. If it's one grant, that's not going to work. Like, you need to signal that there's sustainable funding for doing very, very highly ambitious tasks. And I think oftentimes the way that universities are structured is, like, we kind of have these departments that just kind of crystallized, totally kind of, like, with big gaps between them, and then they do individual research. But it's very rarely that we think, what are the big problems that we want to solve? And then based on that, we build the departments. And, like, let's forget about how it currently is. Let's see where we want to get. And then from there, figure out which are the kind of, like, different disciplines that need to be involved there, right? And so I think that kind of, like, shifting that on its head and then putting money there for these big problems, I think we need to do much more and much faster.
You've teed up Darja beautifully.
Now it's many thoughts, though, where to begin, but agree on everything. And so what policy needs to do, I'll just come back to the AI point first. So when EU chooses, like, to regulate things, then to protect, then we need to promote. The best way to protect something is to promote it. We need to make sure that Europe is a region where we actually come up with these innovations and where they can scale. And if we look at the entire funnel, and it came up so many times today, so too few people with the scientific know-how choose to take this step. And too few ideas are being tested. too few things are being turned into IP, too few startups are being started, too few startups are then successful in it. So I mean, if you just think about the whole pipeline, I appreciate what was said on the previous panel. We just need, the metrics need to go up in all these stages. So what kind of, and then to your point, like what kind of policy instrument, what kind of programs, what kind of designs can actually help promote that? And we heard so many great examples about venture science already, so and moonshots that can be immensely helpful. So if I would come back to that, I would say one of the things that's necessary is to put our money where our mouths are. So if we're saying challenges are super important, put money on the challenges. If we're saying that we want research to build these strong interdisciplinary environments that also, I mean, okay, now too many words, I'll back up a bit. Science and entrepreneurship is magical. It really changes society. It's not magic. It can be taught. It should be taught, So if we put money on the table on programs that reward these types of strong research environments, that build in entrepreneurship from the beginning, we're gonna get more of them. But if we don't, and then keep asking ourselves why we're not getting what we want, it's like, do the math. So, so I guess that's it. Like, make these programs. Put the money where the mouth is. Challenges, interdisciplinarity, entrepreneurship from the beginning, measure it, and get it rolling. And I think there are many great examples we've already heard about in the panel that are like various instruments. Yeah.
Mario?
I could add a too few of these people go into politics in the end, or at least are politically active. So I don't want to go all the people to do in the Bundestag. They should run companies and do entrepreneurial stuff. But I would say to really do good laws or measurements or what to measure, like in the last panel, so we saw it's not easy. You at least need people who understand this. I mean, we are here at Falling Walls, so it's super logical to everybody. But we cannot expect that within the system, and that sometimes is the problem. So nobody creates programs with the wish that they fail. But if you don't really understand the demand side or who you're creating them for, then somehow it's difficult. So the too few is as well, too few people are politically active or speak up, because this is why it's sometimes a bit slow to transform.
Well, I mean, I think that is true. I can only speak from a US context here, right? But there is always this like Valley versus DC distinction, right? And these people do not connect whatsoever. And we have a lot of scientists now. Like Schmidt Futures has this like science entrepreneur policy program where they bring people there. There's the Tech Congress Fellowship. People are trying to go from the scientific end to DC, but we can't have everyone go there. And it's a really different milieu to try to like make progress there. And we have too few people come the other way. Like, we always send out invitations whenever we have a technical workshop in like bio, nano, neuro, AI, what have you. We always send out invitations to policymakers, to governments, even to funding agencies from the larger organizations. And some of them come. And when they come, they usually come again. But like this, I wish there was a little bit more interest or like outreach, or at least like some more willingness to kind of like come for the first time and like engage also from that other direction.
Darja?
It seems to me like you're saying we have one more talent pipeline problem to address. Maybe. Okay. Well, I'll just say, so I work for a government agency, and when government agencies are, let's say, when we're not, that's when we say, oh, we just wish that the ministry would do X and Y. I'm like, we have so much autonomy, we have so much mandate, and that's another, like, more of a reflection on culture then. You said before, and I appreciate that too, that we have to admit, all of us, we were trained for kind of a steady state system, where you could have a level of control that no longer is relevant. I would doubt that you even had it then. It was still society is a complex system, and then, but we just don't. And that means that there are some key principles that we all need to, the importance of leading from the future, alluding to Google X again, like what if things, admitting that there will be uncertainty, so successful ecosystems carry loss in the early phases. State has a huge important role to do that. And then agency, like there's hope in this. So I was saying urgency and agency. So the bad news is I don't decide for government. The good news is I decide some other things. And that's true for everyone. So basically, every single person has agency in pushing the needle on culture. So any discussion that kind of starts with, we wish they would be doing this differently, I just don't. So you are doing amazing things, and I think that's another part. Like, we are all agents in this culture, we can change it. Just this conversation is changing things already. But what I try to say then is, where do we put the money? Says something about what we prioritize, whatever money you decide over. Who do you recruit? And we've heard a lot of good insight on that. Says a lot. And then, are you willing to take risk on others? Like, do you have this pay-it-forward mentality? Are you inviting others? Are you creating opportunity for others to help drive this change? Maybe sounds a little bit like super fluffy, but I think it matters, because that's where every individual can make a difference.
There's another Thomas Kuhn. I'm a Thomas Kuhn fan, for those who've been with us today. And Thomas Kuhn quotes, he said that progress comes more from error than it does from confusion. And therefore, you need to be willing to make the errors. And I thought I'd connect what you've been saying to your world, Frank, because it means a change in my mandate, even as a college professor or as an academic, is that I'm no longer just going to serve the state by educating people, but I might discover something. And then I have to have the willingness to put that on the table and kind of go, look, this thing I think could change the world, or this thing could at least be beneficial to society. And traditionally, and in Germany, I know this is particularly the case, is that you're seen as a sellout for doing that. And that has to change. And that means a total mindset, rewriting the mental rules of society. That's a huge task ahead of us, but it can be done. And I think things like unipreneurs can actually do that. But what's your view? You've been doing that. I'm sure some of your colleagues you've seen kind of chatting in the corner by the water cooler, looking at you and kind of going, sell out over there. And that hurts as well. And that's why these awards are important.
Yeah, I think traditionally, historically, especially in Germany, I think the role of a university professor was not seen as bringing his or her ideas onto the street. You know, whereas you were a servant from the state. You're employed by the state to do research, but also then from colleagues, it's not seen as you know, as we said before, we were measured in how we publish, where we publish, right? How well we publish. And sometimes even maybe it was a malus then if you spin out a company and you commercialize this because you're like a capitalist or something like that, right? Because you personally benefit from your research that was paid by the public.
From your own idea. How dare you?
And I think that's something that this mindset really has to change because who else is going to do it, right? So if these minds that have the ideas don't do it, who's going to do it? But if there's like a malus on doing this, then that's a problem, right? Because people will not jump in there and do it.
Yeah, and I think that's what I heard you were saying earlier on, is there's no accountability. But there is accountability. It takes a movement of people to be able to do that. And KTH, you've been doing this as a government agency, is going, we're going to do this. And we're going to actually take it upon ourselves. And I think that's where you were saying that people you hire become so important, because you need to hire those people who are driven, dopaminergic, those people dopamine driven to make that change as well. Maybe you'll share the KTH story.
I don't dare to.
Oh, sorry, Vinnova story. Sorry. Hungry judge.
Well, we have a broad mandate, and that's great. And our task has, our instruction says, fund needs-driven research and innovation and develop effective innovation systems. And then you go like, okay, what does research say about innovation ecosystems? Well, one of the things that now in time, like innovation is not neutral anymore. We need innovation that help drive transformation, that science, planetary boundaries are pretty real. So then you start, and you need a systems approach. So the research on systems innovation gives a lot of clues, like what kind of capabilities do you need to put in place, etc. And we just do our best to try to, design our programs according to those principles and work very closely to those researchers and those who know best. So I guess that's what we try to do. And of course, it's a cultural challenge as well. But I want to come back to what you said, because I'm curious also about what can help. You know, what breaks my heart, since I'm an entrepreneur, previously I don't come from academia myself, is like the best researchers, what drives them? from my point, make a dent in the universe, like really make a difference. High risk, high reward, willingness to experiment and just have the grit, until you really found the answer. What is it typical of the very best entrepreneur? Make a dent in the universe. High risk, high reward. Work for this. It kind of breaks my heart that the stories we tell ourselves is that these are completely different cultures. It's like, not really, actually. And some of the best environments, you really see how these people, we heard previously from KTH, also many of the best professors get even better from doing this. So what stories we share now can matter.
And Lisa in KTH said as well that they're also given the opportunity, enough runway so they're not like an incubator where you have like 12 to 18 months to succeed. It's like, no, keep going, go again. It's maybe the winter's upon us. And this is, again, coming back to your world, Allison, is that how do you, like, what you've done is you've kind of gone a little bit private in order to do this, looking for private backers who are kind of going, you know what, we need to put this on the table. But from your perspective, how could you change that mindset in other organizations?
Well, I mean, I think in general, just the mindset there is a stark, I think, difference between even here and the US. Oftentimes here, I feel like people are asking the question, like, if I talk to them about an ambitious scientific project, why? Why you? Why now? Why this? And immediately start thinking about all the things that it will fail. In the US, it's like, oh, why not? How can I help? I think that culture shift that you mentioned, it is really just so stark. And I almost, I hope that we don't have to wait until the next generation to change this. But I do think that, we, for example, when we started, we have this fellowship that's been going on for a while, and last year we started receiving applications, and we do a blinded review, and afterwards we found out many of the applicants were 13, 14 years old. They'd started companies through their parents. We had no idea, because we thought they were definitely over 21, must be. And I think people are so hungry so early, so maybe if we don't even let them fall into the tracks of the silos in academia in the first place, then they don't have to be a scientist or an entrepreneur, but they can just be what they are and make progress in a new structure. But I think you need to support that early. There's a few fellowships, like 15, 17, Thiel is a little bit later. We also come in now at the relatively early end, but I think this also needs to be supported, and I think a government would be really a wonderful opportunity to do so, maybe in collaboration with private funders, maybe in collaboration with universities, that there are alternative paths that don't lead into a straitjacket.
And that I'll come to you in a sec, Mario. That really struck me when you told me this about you could have somebody who's totally neurodiverse or not wired to go through the educational system, but be absolutely brilliant, but they're made think that they're either not fit for society or they have to go a different way, and they're failures. And that also needs to change. And that needs, as you said, beyond private backers to give people that opportunity. Imagine you had a public school that actually, publicly funded school that actually enabled that for society, and you'd have so many more entrepreneurs in society. Mario, maybe you were going to pick up on that, I think.
Yeah,
or you are now.
So I love the idea of many more entrepreneurs, and I would say it's not taking more generations. So I can really see progress in universities. I mean, looking to TUM, and there are hotspots where they really already value it. And certainly a state or a government, or the states as well, because we have our beloved federalism, so all of us have to move a little, can basically look if there are new promotions or whatever to ask, have you ever founded a startup? And if this took time, 3 years, whatever, respect it, or even look for these persons. So these are little switches and levers you can basically push and use. It's not yet a cultural change, but it speeds the process up. So I think everybody has something to do in that game. So I like the idea that basically the whole system needs to move, and then I'm absolutely sure that it's not taking ages. The why you brought up with the Germans, hopefully this goes away. I think this would be harder to fix, because at the beginning of a process, I mean, it's a nightmare. If you come to the end of a process, or if you think about security stuff, or the product is already there, it's always nice to have that one German guy in the corner, but is this really working? So at that stage, you can't do harm with it. So it adds up to quality. And in the old world, where we were more incremental and more, let's say, separated, and this was basically a KPI. But now in the new world, where everything turns fast, and basically you need to have, or you don't have to be an expert, adding your point, just be driven and be interested. this becomes a bit of a nightmare. So I think we will not get rid of it, but we should learn not to bring it up as the first question, you know. So and then it might be valuable still in the whole process.
So keep going.
No, is there a time restriction for the?
No, you're okay.
politicians
You're okay.
that
We're
you talk
okay.
Too
We're
long,
okay.
so I normally stop from second to second. See, this is already too long. No. I'll stop here.
Okay. Yeah, Frank, go for it.
Maybe I just wanted to bring one point up again, which came earlier today as well, is that I think if we wanted to change the next generation also, and if we want, because I think we have to start as early as possible. If I think back of my path, I think in the whole state where I did my Abitur, my high school grade, I was, I think, the only one who had as major topics economy and biology. This was something extremely unusual to take. Don't ask me why I took it at the time, but maybe we have to think in the education system early also, if we want this to be there, that there is a mindset of economy and science. Maybe we have to start early in schools already.
Absolutely, that's where I was going with. If you can get people almost tabula rasa, where they haven't been programmed the same as everyone else, that therefore, and that those people were trained for the steady state environment that was maybe more factory work, more mundane work, but those people who are a little bit different, oftentimes they have to go a really long way to get to some type of success. Which brings me back to you, Darja, is how, as an entrepreneur, successful entrepreneur, how did the government lure you in to the Vinnova role?
Good. I believe very much in these early kind of formative experiences, and to the point of also interdisciplinarity, and so there are some stories to tell there. On the government side, I had opinions about what government should be doing. Let's put it that way, which I was kind of vocal about, and then I was invited.
Clever government.
Okay, come to this room and tell us more. And then there was a job opening, and I didn't think that I would apply, but I was asked by a politician, like, who would you recommend? And I was like, this is my moment to recommend 3 strong women. And I blanked out. I couldn't come up with any name, and I went to my hotel room feeling terribly ashamed, actually read the ad and going like, huh. So that's the story.
Great.
But I was invited, and I think that's the main point. Like when there are these voices that, you know, kind of are a bit different, include them maybe.
Yeah.
So that would be a great. But I'm also thinking in terms of different scales, like what could we be doing? And to your point about the educational system, and then again I can't influence that, but from a Swedish, I see many examples that hold a lot of promise. That we've heard about today. So if you look at the NSF I-Corps, if we're coming back to Sciencepreneurship, like the I-Corps made a huge difference in a short time, 1,000 startups plus in 10 years, giving the opportunity for scientists to get entrepreneurial training, mentoring and everything, and get some funding to start things going. So that's a proven concept. It actually works. The EIC is doing some really good things. You know, there are great opportunities already, make use of them. And then I'm looking at the national level going like, okay, let's get this, and we have good structures in place, but that's where I come from. Okay, what about the funding to universities? What about, you know, also results-driven money that cares about these kinds of outcomes? Yeah. Makes sense. If we care about the societal outcomes. In my mandate, then we can use our programs. So the next generation innovation, impact innovation programs are really asking scientists and companies to come up with an ambitious agenda. What super difficult problem are you trying to solve? We're going to be in it for the long term. You're going to get like long-term funding, but we're going to be at you, and we're going to have international people looking at you all the time, and we're also going to help you build capacity, like training and mentoring and stuff that might be useful. So there's always stuff you can do with your mandate. There will always be other things that can be good ideas. And I think at the EU, I see some really good examples already. I don't know the German system, but in the Swedish system, I would say good opportunity next year because of the research and innovation bill for the Swedish government to kind of create. It should be attractive to be a sciencepreneur. It should also be as easy as possible every step of the way, and then we need to be there, like you guys.
But again, it comes down to what I I continually see is it comes down to the person. So you could have easily got that role and done very little, which we've all seen in roles where somebody gets into a role, you're kind of going, brilliant, they've created this role or this agency, and then very little happens from that agency. So the people become so important.
I think that's why we need to champion and really put on a pedestal the ones that do that here. Because I think the interesting thing about all the different private organizations that I mentioned that just bubbled up, they bubbled up in the last few years in the US. And I feel like oftentimes if one organization, whether governmental or whether private, what have you, ideally the government would also really get involved on a big level here. Like if they pull first, others will follow. Yeah. You know, like I think you have a really big avalanche effect. And so I think just championing a few of them first would really go a long way. Because I think you need to kind of like make it safe for others to go there too. And oftentimes, you know, like once they see it's kind of working over here, then more and more organizations start doing these things. But you need to start somewhere, and we then need to champion those people. And if the first one doesn't work that they're trying to fund or that they're trying to do or where they're trying to deregulate in a specific area, and you know, if there's one non-success, we nevertheless have to like also be able to like be like, that's an error. You know, they're not confused. It's one error. Let's learn from this. So I think there needs to be like that support as well, and champion the first one so that we can have more of them, because it is an avalanche effect. Like once there's one in the game, everyone has FOMO and starts coming.
Was this already the Sprint commercial? I mean, basically, this is why we're building. But this is the point of that agency. So, and I'm an optimistic person as well. So yes, everything could have been faster and should be faster, and I'm always hungry. On the other hand side, if we look basically how old Sprint is, so when we talk about the old days, I mean, it's 10 years ago. We were selling cars built on cheap energy. So this was our model, and we were quite successful with it. And so we might have moved a little earlier, but look at DARPA. When was it founded? So they already have ARPA and all these things. But Sprint, it still basically is a prototype there for 10 years. So we're not even at halftime. So this is what really makes me optimistic. It doesn't mean that we are here or nobody should slow down again or chill out or whatever. But it's really lots of things we can do in our German system. So there's Sprint, there will be Darja with a different focus. So and this is what we as government try to tackle, to somehow stimulate innovation. There we have a bit of a quadrant. Basically, you can see, is it single persons or is it groups or is it regions or whatever, to try to have some way of stimulating the system. And then there might be several programs, funds, private initiatives, whatever. So the world is colorful. But at least as a state, you have to try, you never know if it works, to try to somehow to bring that starting point up to the table. And obviously we are here at a starting point. We're here at the panel from Sprint.
So as a state per state system, you hear there's something happening over here in this other state. Do you become curious there and kind of go, what are they doing in that state? Because that's how it happens in organizations. You're kind of going, those guys are getting more recognition than us. And that, you know, that for me is what entrepreneurs is about, etc. But does that happen in your world?
Absolutely, it happens. I mean, it happens in states like countries. It even happens in states like the Länder. You know, there might be good ideas in Baden-Württemberg, whatever, when they try to scale up, or using AI with like Aleph Alpha, who basically managed to raise lots of money for a European perspective, which is super. So we see that it's as well possible as a startup in tech to really get serious money over here. And so Baden-Württemberg was faster in using it than any other state. So the questions come up, you as the federal guys, why are not you using it? So sometimes federalism can be good, I know, and there are many, many examples where it's a bit annoying, but then let's focus on the good stuff. So it can be playgrounds in the end, as long as we accept then to pick that idea up and just repeat it, not to recreate it. So, and looking to other countries now, as states, as countries, absolutely, yes. I mean, there are examples in the panel. We talked already about the US examples, and we have to basically accept, and this is not always easy as Germans, or maybe it was not easy in the German political system, that we don't have to invent everything by ourselves. Just accept that there are smart solutions out there and be willing just to take them in, or at least somehow recreate them, but not start everything from scratch. Because I think we lost as well lots of time there, and if we would have talked about scaling, That's the issue of scaling, because at the beginning it's easy to find money here, but it doesn't sum up. So we have lots and lots of Lego pieces, but only the 4 pieces ones. We don't have the big ones, and that's the problem.
So you have been extremely successful at Vinnova as a shining light of the Lego instructions for the perfect model. And I'd love you to share, like, so if you were to kind of go, look, this is what we did. My instructions, A, B, C, maybe what was different that somebody can pick up and kind of go, this is what you guys can do. It's been recorded over there.
But Vinnova has been around for 20 years, and I just think that, for instance, SPRIND is a great example that we have lessons learned, but also the rest of the world is also, so we're also learning. One of the things that were beneficial for Vinnova was a broad mandate, long-term funding, broad mandate with, just make these types of innovation and the systems perspective. So that was very helpful. And then a culture of trying to look at then, the best in the world, what are they doing in the ecosystems. But we are also an organization in a country that has a lot of culture, innovation culture going for us. So the startup ecosystem, for instance, I'm not so sure Vinnova should take too much credit. I know the state made a difference in terms of the first VC funds, but actually it also boils down to a lot of the paid-for mentality and the choices that seasoned entrepreneurs have been doing and really actively, building the ecosystem. And it also ties back to some policies that were in place even before then. Broadband, PCs get a lot of talent going. So I'm a bit hesitant to talk too much about Vinnova. We have a broad mandate. We are long-term funders. We draw on the best expertise in the world and try to, learn about and borrow models for programs from US and others. And then we learn along the way. So it's kind of a co-creation process internationally. But what I wanted to bring up on the policy side, though, right now that we haven't mentioned, has to do with regulation. I mean, the state has a few other important roles to play than just stimulating. If we're talking about deep tech, okay, so we need to have the supporting system on the ground in terms of, support these programs like iCorps or the efforts SPRIND can do, and how we manage and make it easy to get around the IP, find the solutions, get the training. What we also need are, access to pretty advanced tech infrastructure. Which cannot be, invented every single time. The state has a role to play to make sure that the tech infrastructure is available and open and easy to access. And then regulation, and then demand. So regulation in terms of regulatory sandboxes, for instance, where the EU Commission now is promoting regulatory sandboxes, I think has a huge, important role to play. And we could do it smartly or completely disorganized. So there's something to say about that. We need to experiment also with the regulation. That demands governments to be very mindful about the recruiting leadership in government agencies, because that's another culture shift that needs to happen. And then the demand side. So if we're looking at really successful stuff like DARPA challenges would not be so successful without a huge muscle in the behind, willing to buy the best solutions and be a long-term patient investor, because these deep tech companies, it's not 6 years, it's 10 years, 15 years. It takes patient capital and procurement in new ways. So those are some other aspects of policy that are super important for governments to address.
Yeah, and from your perspective, Allison, like those type of people who are willing to be in for that long ride, I mean, that's difficult, because I know a lot of startup founders and they just get tired and they're going, you know what, do I just get out of here? My wife's giving out to me. The kids are living on crumbs. Yeah. And it's very difficult for people.
You're laughing.
Yeah, no, but it's so true. I know so much. And they pay all the staff, pay themselves last. It's Christmas time. It's not always a pleasant ride. And they absolutely deserve the reward at the end if the reward comes. But if the reward comes, sometimes gets to them. And I'd love you to share maybe how do you keep those people in the game?
I mean, I have been stunned when I arrived at Foresight that people have been with this organization since 1986 and we're still going. We still had a big overlap in terms of people. And those people, like they had dreams of molecular nanotechnology, of like AI, of like even like cryptographic, like I guess prerequisites for smart contracts, of like brain-computer interfaces, very advanced, all the way to whole brain emulation, all that sci-fi stuff. Back in 1986, when I go back into our archives, that's when they started discussing this first, and not just discussing in a philosophical way, but like they were really like trying to work it out, but we weren't ready at that point. Like, we didn't have the scientific infrastructure, and they're still there. Like, so I have like lots of just like admiration for that when people do have a long breath. But I think if you let them, they will be there. Like, we really just need to like. It's not really like we need to do much more to pull them out of somewhere. We really just need to have sustained opportunities for these people to engage. We are a very small org, but we do a lot because it's the community that kind of carries everything. And I think it's the same once you get people there so excited. It's impossible to tell you. Just like the emails are so long that they send. And it's, especially the young folks, I think if we just were enabling then and making it a little bit less sucky to be in that position, especially, I mean, now let's not talk just about academia. It's already like, they take huge pay cuts. If you work in academia versus if you're working at a private company, that is absolutely incredible. I mean, like sometimes it's like 5-7 times as high. It's really, really, especially in AI. And then I think for them and able to stay there, or for them to move somewhere else, for working perhaps on like a different, perhaps more alternative, newer, like let's say like a program that is trying to do like solve one specific big scientific ambitious goal. You need to kind of like get them, to, like incentivize them to go there again. So like you need to just, I think, put incentives out there so that people can move where they're most interested in. And I think that's really about it. Like, I'm sorry, it's not more useful, but I don't think we need to do much to pull them out of somewhere. We just need to do a lot to like enable them.
Yeah. I wanted to come to one more thing. We've a bit of extra time because it's the last panel as well. I want to put this one on the table, and it's probably an uncomfortable one, but that's my job. There's an academic in Harvard, a guy called Joseph Bauer, and I had the great pleasure to interview him. And he talked about how ideas didn't come from the top of the organization; they bubbled up from below, and often there was like this, like the way water and oil doesn't mix, this layer, and the layer was managers who decided which ideas were allowed to come to the top. And it was never a meritocracy. It was never about the idea. It was about the source. It was about, oh yeah, that's Aidan. He's trustworthy. Or in my case, he's not trustworthy. Don't give him the money. But they would decide based on the person. And I thought about that, about even if you take academia, that oftentimes you see the same names in colleges pop up all the time of, for rewards or from some type of success or some type of study, research, etc. But that should never be the case. It should be about the idea. And Frank, maybe you had a thought from your experience on this, and it's great to see you being rewarded from the unipreneurs, but I'm sure you've had many colleagues who haven't been.
Yeah, I mean, I can just resonate that, what we have now spun out as a company as an idea basically is what I did as my PhD project 25 years ago. So it took that long to really move the technology to a situation now where it can be commercially interesting. And it's true. I mean, I was in Dresden. It's a very good university in Germany. It's an excellence university, but there are others that maybe shine more. And I think there's certainly some aspect to this and that's something where maybe one can also leverage more, not only to look always at the ones that are already famous. I totally agree. The best ideas bubble up from below, and to pick them up and not just to say, well, this guy is very good and he knows everything. I think we do too much of that. Of course, very good people often have very good ideas, and Harvard professor that has a great idea often succeeds, and doesn't come from anywhere. But I think still there are many good ideas in other universities that have it much harder and don't get there on time because they're not looked at seriously enough.
Yeah. Did you want to add?
Yeah, because I've got a bit of mixed feelings there. So I'm with you in the analysis. This is why innovation normally is never coming out of big corps or whatever, and why startups are successful. Because then you do the spin-off, you get out, you can do it your way. But that the person is important might not go away. So if you see pitches and if you think about the invest, it's never only about the idea. So it's maybe not about the perception of that person. So this is why you might leave your company and then run your startup and you'll be successful. But the point that it should not be about the person, only about the idea, I think it's not realistic. Because in the end, if you see a team, they have an idea, you as well need to see or feel the persons are these people I trust to invest in. So I guess you can never fully get rid of it. That's just, we are humans, and as long as AI is not doing all the invest, we'll probably stick to that.
Allison and Darja, I saw you both smiling.
No, I'm not sure that I have something that. No, I don't disagree. I just thought, can I contribute anything? But there have been some points made in previous panels also on the importance of diversity. And that's another thing where I think that, just acting on that, because diversity also drives great ideas. So that's kind of something very concrete you can do to kind of help ideas come from other perspectives as well.
So my last question for you panel, my really last question of the day is, if again the great fairy godmother of policy making appears, if anybody's ever seen her, please let us know where she is. Gave you, from your perspective, from your world, the way you see the world, one policy change that could enable sciencepreneurship, what would that be from your perspective? Big one.
I don't know if this is the best one. It's the first one that came to my mind now, is that I think things are still too slow. We've said that several times, and particularly in Germany, I think, when I see other countries, how quickly, when there is a good idea, they can move this forward. There's still a lot of improvement in terms of, also funding. If you apply for a grant in Germany to the BMBF or so, it probably takes 1.5 to 2 years until the grant, even if it's good.
That hurt.
I'm sure
Mario.
there might be others, but I've had situations where this was the case.
He's working on it.
And that would be my wish, maybe, that sometimes, especially, and I think SPRIND is great for this, and I think that it was recognized that oftentimes it takes too long, and I hope that with instruments like this can improve, so that if AI, as we said, came up so quickly, you can't wait long now to evaluate and to check and then to write forms again and ATSAs and what have you, until then the money flows. So this would be my...
You can get ChatGPT to do it for you now as well. It'll be wrong, but... Darja.
Well, that's the same thing, I guess I would say. Put the money on instruments and rewarding the ones that address really big problems with radical potential. And there are good ways to do it. SPRIND has a great example. We had the challenge-driven innovation program at Vinnova. You can do it in StageGate. It doesn't mean that you're just throwing money at crazy stuff at all. There's a lot of lessons learned and good ways to do it. So I guess that's the most important policy. Just put the money where the mouth is.
Thanks, Darja.
I guess there's so many different tools that you can use. You could set up prizes, challenges. You could give out grants. It also depends a little bit on the field, what is most useful at that point. And I would say, fund organizations much more that are already doing this and try to create experiments of that, try to create spin-outs of that, learn from that, just experiment with experiments and innovation a lot. And then I think, if you're hearing this in a policy space right now, literally next time I think, just ask yourself, is there someone in that scientific domain that I'm trying to regulate, or that I'm potentially looking to support a little bit, that I can reach out to and ask? People will talk to you very, very willingly, and people have good ideas. It's not that everyone just wants no regulation who's trying to push science forward. They have good and reasonable ideas. And I think just having that one thought, no one will not answer that email, for sure not. And I think also if someone in your organization, in a policy or making organization is kind of trying to do something new, is trying to do something innovative, support them. And often it takes, I think there's this YouTube video where there's one person who starts dancing and they're the crazy person, but then the second one starts and suddenly you have this kind of wave. And I think sometimes it's also the supporter of the first person that goes. So if you see someone doing that, champion them, try to help them, try to support them, and do not try to cancel them.
Brilliant. Mario?
So the big fairy, since we're on cam, I should not talk about the Bundeshaushaltsordnung here. No, to be honest, if I have one wish, I would probably ask for everybody in a process of regulation to have the chance not to be forced to see the world for 1 month, maybe 3 eyes of an entrepreneur. To just understand what it means to the other side, to take 2 weeks more to decide. So, you know, in an office space or in a ministry, 2 weeks to decide, that's not a lot. So basically, if you live on the breadcrumbs, it's a lot. So this would be my wish.
That's great. That's great. Well said. So we'll come to the audience. If everybody's hungry judges maybe has no questions for our panel. Anything out there? Barbara.
I'm looking at this beautiful picture, so I'm going to ask the big hairy question, which is, we were talking all these beautiful carrots that we want to put out there in order to create more sciencepreneurship, in order to create this enabled environment for entrepreneurship. I want to talk about the sticks as well. So what kind of sticks do you think the system maybe needs to be beaten into shape?
Who has the stick?
Government has the stick?
As you're thinking about that, this is Gabrielle Heinzel, Gabrielle-Heinzel.com, and she's just drawn a massive stick on the over there. So over to our pal there to take the stick. Yeah, please.
I think we heard some clues. I mean, there was a discussion in the previous panel, so I'm thinking when government has dialogues with universities and actually fund them, maybe fund them more based on, you know, the metrics that we can look at in looking at there's a pipeline to be built here. How many ideas evaluated? How much IP? How many new startups? Those should be included in that. And also, to what extent are we building strong interdisciplinary research environments that embed entrepreneurial training from the beginning? Those are like discussions we should be having, and the government can absolutely do that, I think. But I'm just a government agency civil servant, so what should I?
Yeah, I guess I do think funding is funding conditional upon X is like a good. I guess it's not really a stick. It's kind of like a conditional carrot or something. But I think it's a nice stick or something. And I think that, you know, even for example, when people write research proposals, you know, like in DARPA, if you look at the normal scheme, you know, they have to kind of like give research horizons and like what happens if it fails. And I think making these questions more ambitious, you know, and like actually giving out funding conditional on more ambitious milestones, and especially encouraging a research organization to do the same, maybe even encouraging reviewers in journals to do the same, so it's not just incremental things that get funded, but actually like making it a mandate across all these different individual organizations that influence science, that, you know, you get published conditional upon also like having a really strong ambitious claim in there. You get funding conditional upon also actually trying to do something amazing with it. So I think that is, I guess, my my cheeky carrot.
So at first I was lucky that we are the one with the sticks and not the ones beaten in that story. So I guess we should make sure that there are plenty of sticks in general, because you never know. We were talking about funding, but making sure that there's a talent pipeline, giving students the freedom basically by paying the universities decently and not switching off technologies because we just don't like them, as for example to compare genetic engineering and really like using it or eating it, US compared to Europe. So there might be different sticks used to put the individual carrot for each and everybody to something, and I guess really making sure that there is a broad variety of everything, at least talking now from a BMBF perspective, which is not a classical regulator. We are more a facilitator to really make sure that there are smart people like you out there, and so I would say we're the stick factory.
Yeah, please, yeah.
And now I'm going to be a politician, because I actually do get beaten sometimes after panels like this.
Yeah.
We will protect you.
And I'll just, yes, excellent fundamental research is extremely important, and we need it, and we're in it for the long term. However, that's something that we know that, and we have that, and we're doing it, and we're going to continue doing it. What we're talking about now is the other part, the one where we are absolutely losing, and we are not good enough, and that's all this panel is about. It's, you know, the other part that we also really need.
Brilliant. I'm from Ireland, and we have a saying, I don't know if it's the same for every country, but it's like there's not much difference between a pat in the back and a kick in the ass. So very different, a few inches in the difference. So carrots, sticks, who knows? Before I wrap up for the day, I want to thank a few people. So Johannes Sieben over here from Falling Walls. Nicholas Rode down the back as well with the microphone. They did unbelievable work. So even for the panel, you may have noticed I didn't really look at my notes. That's because Nicholas wrote like a Bible for me of amount of notes over the last... and Barbara Deal from SPRIND is right here. If you need a stick, Barbara has loads of sticks as well. So those guys did multiple calls with all of us. They prepared us unbelievably well. And of course, Gabrielle for doing the scribe work as well. And finally, apart from you guys, to the panel for coming and doing the graveyard shift with us here as well. Frank, Darja, Allison, and Mario, thank you for joining us. Have a good night.
Thank you, Aidan.
Thank you.